You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, Episode 1. This week on the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, we will introduce you to the show. We're going to talk a little bit about some conservation and habitat success, and then we're going to cover early season resident goose season. So grab a seat, settle in, let's go. All right, welcome to the show. My name is Josh Palm. I'm a co-owner of HP Outdoors and your host for the podcast here. This podcast is going to be designed for the waterfowl hunter and is going to be your one-stop shop for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. We're going to cover lots of different segments, tips, things that we hope that you will find useful and entertaining, and you may even get a little tip or two that you'll be able to use next time out in the field. Joining me on the podcast is going to be my co-host, Dan Harushka. Dan is also a co-owner of HP Outdoors, and he'll be joining me on the show every month when we bring it to you and talking about the different things in the industry. So I'll go ahead and ask Dan to share a little bit about himself with you here.
Well, guys, we're excited to get this started, and just a little about myself. I grew up in Northwest PA, hunting, fishing, spent a lot of time in the whitetail woods, did some bear hunting with family, small game, a lot of rabbit, a lot of pheasant hunting, a lot of trout fishing. Didn't do too much waterfowl hunting in high school, absolutely none in college, but when I got out of college and I guess I got my bearings a little bit, got into waterfowl with some friends, and it's in my blood. I love being in a duck blind or laying in a field with my buddies and getting after them. So it's something that's near and dear to me now, and I spend a lot of time doing it. I love it, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, just like Dan, I'm in a very similar situation. Grew up in Northwest Pennsylvania, primarily a deer and turkey hunter. And, I only got into waterfowl hunting really because deer season would end on the first Saturday of January. And, I just wasn't ready to hang it up yet. I was looking for ways to extend the season and stay outdoors longer, which led me to waterfowl hunting, which was a challenge because I didn't have a mentor or, a buddy that did it. So it was something that I had to learn on my own through a lot of just trial, tribulations, and frustration. So through that, I think I've learned a lot of good tips and, a lot of heartbreaking stories that I'll share with you guys, as we go through the show here. So I'm hooked now. It's my primary focus. I don't deer hunt near as much as I used to because I spend a lot more time chasing waterfowl. I still love the turkey hunt, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about, some turkey hunting in the spring, because I know a lot of waterfowlers that do that as well. So hopefully we'll get to cover a little bit of that. And, we've been fortunate enough that our passion for waterfowl hunting has led Dan and I to starting HP Outdoors. And we've done a couple different things with that company, and we've got some other things coming down the pipe. So we encourage you guys to check us out on hpoutdoors.com and see some of the other stuff that we have going on. One thing that we want to make sure that we're pretty clear about is, we want this podcast to be something that's engaging for you, the listener. So if there's something that we're not covering or that you would like to see us cover better or something that you would like to see us include, please feel free to reach out to us. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. You can reach out to us through our website at hpoutdoors.com, or you can email us directly at info@hpoutdoors.com. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do our best to get you guys content that you want to hear. So without further ado, Dan, I think we should just go ahead and get into the show, and we'll start it off with our first segment of the day here.
Do it.
So Dan, a little bit of good news coming out of the annual spring survey, which was conducted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services in conjunction with the Canadian Wildlife Services. They're estimating that the breeding duck population is just north of 49 million birds, which is surpasses the previous high set in 2012 and is 8% ahead of the 2013 estimate. So obviously that's all great news, and signals good things for us bird hunters that are going to be watching the skies here come the fall.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Like we talked before, the survey started in 1955. We don't do too much diver duck hunting. So when we're looking at these numbers, the mallards, gadwalls, widgeons, green and blue-winged teal, mallards and gadwalls, they're at their second highest levels ever since 1955. The teal are coming in at their third highest. So, it's definitely a good feeling to get out in a duck blind and know that there's going to be some birds around.
Yeah, it's funny because you hear people talk about the days of yesteryear and the back when the ducks used to fly and all that kind of stuff. And really the research that we're looking at here would suggest that we might be in that time period again, if not stronger. We're seeing more birds. I think a lot of the challenges that a lot of people are seeing is the weather cooperating and, timing up with the seasons. But that's kind of a different discussion, I think. But, the only thing that I could really take away as a negative from this survey is that of the 10 key species that they survey, only pintails and canvasbacks decline. So on one hand, that's a good thing that there's only two, species that have declined a little bit. But at the same time, you'd like to see all the key species, on the increase. So still some room to go, but obviously some great results coming out of that study. And, of course, these numbers don't happen on their own. There's a lot of good work, being put in by a lot of people, to ensure that these things happen. And, a little bit of that's done by every single person that takes to the waterfowl, woods every year by purchasing a federal duck stamp. That duck stamp, has sold almost 130 million stamps, generating close to $1 billion in revenue. And of every dollar of that sale, 98 cents of it is spent buying leasing and land for the National Wildlife Refuge System. So every single person that goes to the field every year is doing a little bit to help contribute to these successes.
Right. Herbert Hoover, he signed the Migratory Bird Conservation Act in 1929, and the actual Duck Stamp Act was signed in 1934 by President Roosevelt. In 1934, Duck Stamp was $1. So I think there's been 7 times that it's been increased. Now, $14.70 of your $15 that you pay for the stamp goes into retaining wetland. It's retained by the federal government for wetland acquisition and conservation. So there aren't too many programs where 98 cents on $1 goes towards the actual meaning of the program. I think that's pretty impressive in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's no wonder why, Ducks Unlimited and, some of these groups are, trying to push these initiatives. Buy 2 stamps, buy an extra one in case your buddy forgets his in the blind, buy another one in case you take a youngster out, or, just buy one because it's a good thing and it's, it's a high return on your waterfowl conservation dollar. So, those are all good things coming out of the duck stamp, which we were happy to say is celebrating its 80th birthday here in August this year. So all good stuff there. Another big thing on the conservation home front is the 2014 Farm Bill, which was signed into law on February 7th, which allocates essentially $956 billion for general farming, and there's some conservation programs included in that. Of note is the Conservation Reserve Program acreage, which, CRP. And although those numbers have dropped a little bit from the bill from 2008, there's still going to be a significant number of grasslands conserved in that program, which are vital for breeding ducks and nesting habitat. So another good win there. Another thing that some people may not know is that the Farm Bill actually allocates a significant portion of money. This most recent bill requires a spending of $40 million through 2018 for hunter access programs such as open fields, or some may know the private lands open to sportsmen's plots program in North Dakota. So these are taxpayer funds that are going into habitat conservation and access for wildlife, hunters and programs to be put into place. So a lot of good things that are going on there. One of the bigger things that comes out of this program that a lot of people may or may not know about is the Swamp Buster program, which is essentially a very simple program that requires a landowner or a farm owner to conserve wetlands and not develop them into crop fields to be eligible for financial, federal funding and farm payments. So this has been wildly successful in the past, and I know that it was a big win to keep that program into this bill because crops and things like that are at all-time high prices. So farmers want to convert those marginal wetlands into farming and agricultural fields if they can. So this is going to help prevent them from doing that by getting funding from the federal government. So a lot of really good work being done on the conservation home front.
Yeah, the Swamp Buster program, I mean, you're talking, over 1 million acres that could have been drained for farming. So that's a huge opportunity for wildlife, and not just ducks, but deer and everything else living in there. That could have dropped the waterfowl populations. They estimated 37%. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, those are just critical programs in a time when financial squeezing and spending cuts and things are on the forefront. And when they're passing these budgets, they're looking to cut anywhere that they can. And it's from the work of Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, Waterfowl USA, the grassroots chapters that are notifying their congressmen, emailing their senators, letting them know what's important to them and what they want to see them doing on their behalf. So, I'd call it a guarded victory there. Obviously, there were some cuts and some concessions made in the program, but overall, the program is still intact, and there's still going to be funding for the next, several years to support conservation and the continued efforts that have, quite frankly, led to the increased breeding rates and the all-time numbers that we're seeing as far as ducks go.
Yeah, you talk to some of the old timers around, and they say, back in the good old days. Well, the good old days are right now with everything coming back around and the numbers that we have. It's tough to argue that we aren't in the times.
Without doubt. So let's get into another topic that we're going to cover a little bit in a little bit more depth this week, and that's the early resident goose season. All right, Dan, conservative estimates place the U.S. resident Canada goose population between 3.5 and 5 million geese. And there are at least 39 states now that are offering early hunting seasons for Canada geese. There's a bunch of different reasons why I love hunting early season Canada geese, and we're going to get into some of those. But I'm going to tell you my number one right now. It's the fact that I've been sitting here all summer thinking about waterfowl hunting every single day. And now it's finally here. I finally get to get back out in the field, get in the blind, and start chasing birds. I've been cleaning decoys. I've been cleaning blinds, brushing blinds, practicing my calling every day in the car, driving my wife crazy, that kind of thing. It's finally here. We're on the doorstep. We're ready to get back in the field.
Yeah. Hey, you can only clean your decoys so many times, right? So
they're really clean. But, like I said, I just can't get enough of it. And, it's one day closer to the season starting. So, obviously for me, it's just getting back out there and getting after it. But, like I said, there is a ton of things to love about the early goose season. Tell me about some of your favorites.
Number one, the high bag limits. When we start out, we're not as high as New York. We're not in a 15 per man range, but where we hunt opening day and early season, we're at 8 a man. And, that's a good time. 8 birds, and that's a lot of time out in the field. So besides that, you get the warmer weather. It's good to get kids out. It's good to get some grandparents, older folks that can't handle the cold. Get them out there and let them enjoy what they always have. On top of that, we have quite a bit of banding that goes on around here. So it never hurts to see a little bling in the field, and that definitely gets you excited when you see the family groups with multiple bands in the field.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the bag limit thing is something that is, is interesting because, we're both from Pennsylvania and we still hunt primarily Atlantic flyway, and I now live in Virginia, but I come back up there and hunt with you a good deal up there in Pennsylvania. And in the early season here in Virginia, we can shoot 10 birds per man in the early season. Into the regular seasons as we get going, it drops down to 3 birds. Some sections of the state are 2 birds, and comes back up into 5 later in the season. So really, there's just no other opportunities like this where you get to go out and you really get to get some trigger time if you can get into that number of birds and really have a good shoot and have a lot of fun. The warm weather is just great too. It's nice. As waterfowlers, we battle some of the worst weather conditions that Mother Nature can throw at us. But, it's nice to be able to go out there and relax in a nice warm field and not be freezing, because we all know when we're out there that it's coming, and we look forward to that to some degree, but at the same time, we know we're about to be cold for a little while. And then, like you said, the van thing, I mean, there's just no other opportunities where you can pull in a family flock of birds and they could all be banded, up there in Northwest Pennsylvania where we hunt. It's not uncommon to have a family come in and knock down, 6 or 7 birded bands on a pass. So, or banded birds on a pass. So, really great stuff, really cool opportunities. The thing is, it still is waterfowl hunting. It's not like you can just walk out to a field, lay down in your blind, and birds are just going to come feet down, with reckless abandon. You still got to put in the time. You still got to do some of the key things that, you got to do every season, whether it be early, mid, or late. And that first, the first thing, and you hear this all the time, you can do whatever decoy spread you want. You can call whatever, call you want to use, whatever flag you want to wave, whatever it is. But your most successful thing to get on birds is going to be on the X,
Right. Scouting is definitely number one. Depending on the field, even the section of the field is important, and that's a huge part that, a couple of the guys up here spend a lot of time doing. You put miles and miles on every day just to find that X. And like you said, you can wave a flag, you can do all the calling you want, but if the birds don't want to be there, you're not going to have a successful hunt.
Yeah, and unlike in the late season where you might have migratory birds coming through and they're, hitting their spots periodically and they're erratic and they're moving on, these resident birds, a lot of times you can pattern them well into, August, and they're going to be hitting these same fields, same groups of fields, roosting in the same areas. So it's just a more predictable flight. You should be able to tell a lot better what time, they're getting up off the roost, what time you expect the numbers of flights, the number of birds you're seeing per flight, how many birds you're seeing in the field. Like those numbers should stay fairly consistent, with those resident family flocks. So obviously huge benefits to being on the X, and where the birds want to be.
Another tip on the scouting, scout at the time that you're going to be hunting. Birds could go to one field in the morning and in the afternoon, they could be at a totally different area. So if you want to hunt in the morning, put your miles in then and see what the birds are doing.
For sure. Yeah, that can't be understated. I mean, if you go out and, scout for 30 minutes on your lunch break, chances are you're not going to find birds where they're going to be at first light, on that opening day. So really good point there. Another thing too is, in the early season, if they're coming to food and they're on a routine, a lot of times you can almost keep your calls in your pocket. You obviously give them a little bit, keep them online, that kind of thing, but you don't need to get out there and light them up like you're on the contest stage for that opening morning. If they've been hitting that same field for the last 2 weeks every day. So, just read the birds, be mindful of what you're seeing, listening to that lead bird, see what they're doing and keep them online. Obviously you need to keep in mind, are these birds that are coming off the roost and, they're coming to your field on their routine pattern, or is this a flock that just got shot at, a couple fields over, and now they're kind of scrambling and they're looking for a place to set down and they're a little disheveled. So obviously you got to read that a little bit, but if they're unpressured birds that are coming right off the roost, I mean, hey, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't overdo it.
Right. The first thing you want to not do is just grab your call and, go through a contest routine, because more than likely they're not going to respond well to that. Listen to the lead bird, base your calling according to that. Most of the time, in early season, we just mock whatever we hear. So if you hear a honk, you honk back, a double, and it's pretty successful. You don't have to go in and show your best stuff on opening day. And more than not, it's going to hurt you if you do.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially, when you got a lot of people in other fields and they might just be getting shot at and they're hearing calls at every field they go to, sometimes it pays to be a little bit different, sort of on that same line. A nice thing about the early season is you can a lot of times get away with a slightly smaller spread. Obviously, you're going to want to gauge it on what you're seeing in the fields and kind of set your spread accordingly. But if you're seeing a field that's getting hit with, 40 birds a day, you can keep you don't need to roll out, 10 dozen full bodies. like you're setting a snow goose spread. You can set your decoys in family groups. 5, 6, 7 birds. Space them out. Give your flocks plenty of land, room to land, that kind of thing. But you don't have to go crazy on the equipment either, which is nice. Everybody likes to be able to kind of hike it into the field and not have to spend 2 hours setting up decoys.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like us. If it's wintertime, you want to be with, cuddled up. You want to stay warm, and that's kind of what the birds do too. You're going to find them in, tight groups, and when it's warm out, like we do, we're outside and we're spread out. We don't want to be touching people and getting all hot. Like, they want their room too. So, family groups are going to be spread out a little bit. And it's just something to look for. And if you put the scouting in, you'll see it, and just like you said, kind of set up according to that.
Yep, and just to jump back a little bit too, when we were talking about calling, early in the season, it's not uncommon to hear those family groups being a little bit more vocal between themselves. So if you're hearing that in your field when you're scouting and stuff, you may be able to employ that same kind of technique, when you got birds working the spread. Obviously the whole goal is to be realistic. So they might not be all grouped up and bunched up together, but there's still going to be some vocalizations going on, between those small family groups, as they're commuting with those younger birds that are still trying to, be from this year's hatch and that kind of thing. So, just another little tip there to keep in mind when you're out there scouting. Keep your ears out for that kind of stuff. Another, this is almost counterintuitive for me to say this because, as waterfowl hunters, we're used to getting away from pressure and trying to find the secluded spots where birds aren't going to be getting shot at and that kind of thing. But in the early season, there can be a lot of benefit to hunting those weekends, hunting those Saturdays when there's guys in a bunch in the other fields. Yeah,
definitely. When birds are getting shot at, they're up and they might head for safety, and that might be your field. So, we definitely like going out on weekends around here. People are going to be bumping birds back and forth, and that's definitely a benefit to getting out there.
Yeah, and we all know, that field that the one farmer doesn't allow anybody to hunt because he hunts it once or twice a year, and that's the field that they always want to go into. And then you're kind of out of luck when that happens, and there's nothing worse than watching birds going feet down into a field, across the road from where you're hunting all day long. But on those Saturdays or that opening day, that farmer might be in there that day, and that may be your best opportunity all season. You may only get 1 or 2 days like that a year where the bird can't go there. So, you got to be there and ready to capitalize. So there's definitely less protected areas for birds to land. And another thing too, in these early season hunts, in a lot of parts of the country in September, it's still warm. You got people boating, swimming, kayaking. They're out on the reservoir, they're out on the river, that kind of thing. So they're still getting up in the bedroom of those honkers. So they're less likely to hang out on that water all day if they've been pressured. They got to get up and they get pushed out of there by, just recreational people. So, those birds get in the air and it gives you an opportunity to work them. So lots of good reasons why you want to be out there when everyone else is out there. Another really sort of a unique thing for the September seasons and the early seasons are, you can find those smaller pockets of birds where you've got just, a handful of family groups working there. There's a huge benefit to working just the smaller little pockets of ice, working 100 and 150 birds that are hitting one field all at one time.
Yeah, it's definitely, we love getting doubles and triples and, fours coming into our spread just because you don't educate the birds and you can be more successful without, so many problems deeper into the season. You don't educate a group of 20 and they don't hesitate as much.
Secluded pockets of birds. It allows you the opportunity to get you and a buddy or two, you and your son, whatever, get out there, get set up. Maybe you're done by 8:30 and you get, 2 flights a night, a couple decent, flocks of 5 or 6, and you knock a couple birds down, and that's a heck of a hunt. You get in, you get out, and you get to take care of the obligations that you got the rest of the day. Get out in the afternoon, go shoot some doves, go out and do some bass fishing, whatever you want to do. So that's a great opportunity that, you don't necessarily get the opportunity to have in the late season when it's cold and, the birds are going to hang on the roost a little bit longer and they're, you're sitting out there freezing and you don't know when the flight's going to take place, if it happens at all. So, something really to kind of keep in mind when you're scouting your birds and you decide which field you're going to hunt and that kind of thing. And I want to just take a minute here and ask Dan for you to share a story with us about last year's opening season. It was in a unique situation, and the moral of this story is, all of these things that we're talking about can be effective, but all of it comes back to our very single first point that we started with was, being on the X and where the birds want to be. And Dan's got a really great example of why this is the number one, rule.
Yeah. Opening day last year, we, scouted weeks up until the opening day, and we had a couple guys actually camped on the edge of the field, that we had permission to hunt. So I was not one of the one that camped out, but I got there in the morning and I pull in. I was like, man, I've never seen those trucks before. Well, there was another group of people that also had permission. It's no secret where we hunt. All the farmers give out permission. They don't care. They'd rather see the geese gone. So they give permission to everyone. And going back to the story, we get there and the group that wanted to hunt, they had no blinds. So we were planning to go out, and they actually got in between our field and another field in a tree row. And as we were setting up, I think there were about 2 or 3 other trucks that pulled in, and it was actually the landowner's grandkid and a couple of his friends that also wanted to hunt. And we asked them to join us, and they said, no, we'll just go down to the other end of the field. Well, we ended up with a really successful day, and it wasn't because they, we didn't have a better spread than them, but, going back to the scouting and being in that certain portion of the field, we were where they wanted to be, and we knocked quite a few down. So, yeah, that was a pretty good story. It started out, it's easy to lose your temper in a situation like that and get mad and just pack up and leave. But if you put the time in and you know where the birds are going to be, stick it out. Invite them to hunt with you, or if they want to go elsewhere, they can go. But be a team player, be a sportsman, and get out there and. Most of the time it's going to pay off.
Yeah, I can't echo what you just said enough. Being a team guy is really one thing that's really sort of drawn me to waterfowl hunting over, deer hunting and some other, situations like that is, so oftentimes, people get hung up on one buck and they work and that's their buck. And, it's upsetting if somebody else harvests their buck and that kind of thing where, the camaraderie that you feel, having a group of guys in the field with you and everybody shooting birds and everyone having success. It's just a great feeling that is something that you just don't get in a lot of other, hunting opportunities. So, don't be afraid to, if you got people wanting to hunt the field, try to partner up, try to, make it work, because there's plenty of birds. You all wouldn't be there trying to hunt that field if there weren't enough birds, for everybody to be hunting. So, keep that in mind, let cooler heads prevail and, try not to ruin it for anybody and for yourselves, especially, make sure you take a deep breath and see if you can work something out. And, like Dan said, they stuck it out last year and they had a heck of a hunt. And they got people all around them, but, just a little thing to keep in your mind as the opening day, gets closer here for this year.
Yeah. On that note too, sorry to cut you off there, but just saying, you never know when you're going to find another hunting buddy, and it might be that group that, they didn't have blinds because they didn't know enough. So, it's a good time to educate people as well. And exchange numbers, and next time you go out, teach them something, or they could have a field that, those farmers that only hunt twice a year, that might be a relative, and you can go and have another, killer of a hunt. So you never know. And like you said, just be courteous and don't be that guy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's really well said. Couple other things, sort of just some odds and ends that, we find is to be successful and, just good things to keep in mind and good practices as you get into the early seasons here. First thing, bug spray, thermocells. You're still hunting in early September. It can be really, really warm. Make sure that you bring your bug spray with you. Nothing worse than sitting out there getting lit up by mosquitoes all morning. and your buddy next to you is sitting nice and comfortable because he's got the thermocell in the blind with him. So make sure you take care of that. Depending on the section in the area that you hunt, ticks can be really bad still in the early season. So make sure you're taking appropriate precautions there and protecting yourself from those kind of things.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having a flock come in and you're just smacking yourself in the face trying to get bugs off you. So that's something that I usually forget. I always pack some bug spray in my truck now, but a thermocell, it gets left at home quite a bit, and that's not on purpose. So,
yep, I learned that lesson. Mine never stays home. It's in the blind bag all the time. So, another one here that's really, 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 really important and gets overlooked a lot, and I want to make sure that we spend enough time talking about this: concealment. This is important every single time you hunt, whether it's the first day of the opening season or the last day of the end of the season. If the birds see you, you will not be successful. So take the time to brush your blinds in well, do it the night before, make sure you get to the field early enough to where you leave yourself enough time to do it. And don't let your buddy off the hook. If your buddy's slacking off and his blind looks bad, make sure you get on him and make sure that his is brushed as good as you'd want yours brushed, because it only takes one. And, you can really start flaring birds if you're not brushed in good.
Right. And to touch on that, I know we're talking about early season, but, for those that don't hunt late season and guys that don't think that concealment means that much, a couple of late season hunts we had last year, and, the lack of a snow blind, you do your scouting, you put the miles in, and you know where the birds are at. And then you have a fully white field with, 3 brown blinds in it. And there's nothing worse than laying in cold and just flaring birds that want to be in that field because of the lack of concealment. It's the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of money that we as waterfowlers spend on guns, ammo, decoys, blinds, camo, all of that sort of stuff. You put all of that money in so that you can be successful. And that's something that's free, that just takes a little bit of effort, is all that is, can cost you a hunt. So, if you put it in perspective, the things that don't cost you any money are the things that you should never miss. But yet, you continue to see it. You drive by fields and you can see blinds that aren't brushed in appropriately. And, if you can see them from the field, you can guarantee birds flying over top, can see them. So, not just brushing the blinds. So use your head when you're setting up on your spread. Pay attention. Which way is the sun going to rise? Can we get this, the wind in our back and get the, the sun in, in the bird's eyes? Can you use shadows and terrain features of the field? Are there hay bales and, ditches and depressions in the field that you can set up in? And, if the farmer allows you, can you dig your blind in a little bit? Obviously that comes into play a lot more into the later parts of the season when the corn gets cut down and that kind of thing. But, hey, if you got to look at your early season setup just as you would any other time of the year.
Yeah. And I think one of a cool instrument that the guys are using now, and I don't think it's just to check, while they're actually hunting, but the helicopters that take a GoPro up in the air and they fly over their blinds. And I saw a couple with, a duck blind on the edge of a pond, and you fly up there and, they're totally concealed. You can't see anything. And even when they do a goose blind in the middle of a field and they fly over, you can see a little bit of a difference, but the guys that don't take the time to, brush in a blind, it glares, as people looking and, knowing what you searched on YouTube for, that you're looking for blinds. But those birds, they're still alive for a reason. They check things out before they land. They get weary. And, like you said, take the time, make your buddies take the time, get down, and you'll be more successful if you put the time in on that.
Yep. A little mud on your blind goes a long way, that kind of stuff. So I'll just keep that in mind. A couple more things here. Be flexible, just like any other time of the season. If you get a couple flocks that come in and you're flaring birds, everybody get out, take a look. Is there something going on with the spread? Is there a decoy that's got mud that you didn't get cleaned off well enough? Or is there, not a big enough pocket for the type of, the size of flocks you're working, that kind of stuff. Don't think that just because the birds want to be in that field that you're not doing something that's flaring them. So if it's not working like you think it should, chances are there's something going on. Jump out, take a look, take a step back, save the hunt, make the adjustment that you need to.
Yeah, and being flexible, touching on this, if you're going back to what I was saying before, a certain section of a field, if the birds are landing, 40 yards out, if your first flock comes in, or more than 40, but, outside of range doesn't give you a good look, get up and move out there. They, if they've been using that field for a week and, they've worked over where you're set up at, don't be afraid to get up, move blinds, move decoys, on the hop, like get up and do it. And, that's something that we learned early, the birds were just staying way outside and we never made those adjustments and they kept landing. Well, if you get that first flock out of there, get up, scare them off. It might be 5-10 birds, get them out of there, move your stuff and more birds are coming. And more than likely they're going to be right on top of you.
Yep. That's a good point for sure. Another thing that I like to always remember is, decoys have obviously come a long way over the years, and they've really become really lifelike, great motion, all that kind of stuff. When we were talking about being in the right spot and not overcalling and that kind of thing, what can be as effective as your call around your neck is the goose flag that you got in your hand. That type of motion right there can be as effective as anything else that you can take with you. So do not forget the flag. If you got a couple people working flags, don't just hand the flag to a guy that can't run the call just to make him feel like he's included, because flagging is super important. So make sure that whoever's got the flag or whoever has the flags, make sure that they know what they're doing when they need to hit them with it, when they need to be a little more subtle, and that you're using that appropriately, because that'll separate you from the field over that's got guys in it that aren't using flags. I can promise you that. So that pretty much covers our early season goose wrap up. We hope that we covered that pretty thoroughly for you guys. Maybe there's one or two things that you hadn't thought about or hadn't used in the past. So hopefully those are good tips and just things that get you a little juiced up and a little fired up for the season approaching. So let's go ahead and transition again here, and let's talk about our parting shot. So one of my favorite things about this time of year is the catalogs that you get from Cabela's and Max Perry-Wing, Final Flight Outdoors, Rogers, whoever your store choice is. I love getting these free magazines from these stores. It comes out with all this gear, and I just sit there and I leaf through these. But it comes out right at the right time of the year where I'm just ready to get out there and hunting. And these magazines come, and it just helps me get that last little bit of summer out of the way. So I got my catalogs out. I'm making notes on what I want to buy and things that I like. And I like seeing some of the transitions from the years in the past. And I tend to save them, and I'll go back and compare calls and decoys and stuff, and just see how things are changing, see how the industry is progressing, see how prices are changing, things like that, and who's new to the game, who's been around, who's being innovative, who's not being as innovative. So a lot of great information out there. It's all free. Just something else to sort of get you over the hump here as the season approaches. So if you don't get them, get on their website, sign up for them. They're all free, and I promise you it'll give you a little reading material between that last month of summer until the season starts. All right, we'd like to thank you for joining us for the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. If you like what you hear, you can check us out on hpoutdoors.com. You can find us on Facebook, at Twitter, and you can always get on iTunes and subscribe and download the podcast. So, again, we look forward to bringing you this show. We hope that it's informative. If there's something that you want us to talk about or cover, please email us, info@hpoutdoors.com. We'll be more than happy to get what you want on there. So until next time, for Dan, I'm Josh. Thanks for joining us. Take care.